Sarah Gorrell until 2 o'clock this afternoon, and I'm delighted to welcome back to the studio somebody we spoke to last year, actually, and really enjoyed having on the programme. And this is the founder and director of Outside In. It's a Sussex charity that provides a platform for artists encountering significant barriers to the art world, including health, disability, social circumstance and isolation. They've currently got an exhibition at Hove Museum showcasing 80 artworks on the theme of humanity. Now, Marc Steene was awarded an OBE for services to the arts in the New Year's Honours List. He's also hosting a conference in Brighton this week on humanising the arts and joins me in the studio. Many congratulations, first of all, on getting the OBE.
Yeah. Thank you ever so much, Sarah.
And yes. you've got rid of a myth for me, because I thought it would come in a big thick envelope with a lot of flourish, but it just comes in a normal. It could be a bill or anything when you get told you've got an OBE.
It wasn't even on fancy paper. It was just in a standard envelope. Yeah.
How did you feel though when you opened that envelope
really
and it says
surprised. Yeah, no, just I didn't quite know what to expect. I had no expectation at all, so I sort of sat down I actually went and lied down on my bed for a minute. Just to take it all in, and then I sort of called my wife and said, are you sitting down?
Was she in on it? Did she know at all?
No.
So it's all a big secret.
Well, really a big secret.
Well, very well deserved.
Thank you.
And because you have done so much in the world of arts. And I think sometimes people think of art as being elitist and not for them and for being for other people. You've very much worked to break down those barriers.
Completely. It's been my life's mission to sort of work to make the art world a fairer place, to be more inclusive, to celebrate like creativity wherever it sits, and not just look at sort of conventional practice or people who've been schooled or trained. That there's a lot of people making art who just make art for a host of other reasons, whose work isn't currently seen or valued, and it's to the sort of detriment of our sort of cultural landscape. We need to be seeing it.
I think right from when you're very little and you do your first artwork, you get divided into people that are good at art and people that are bad at art. My son, for instance, went to the GCSE art talk, and his teacher looked in horror at the idea that he might even contemplate going any further with his artistic skills.
Yeah, no, well, it's so true, but I see the same with my own children, to be honest, Sarah. Where we sort of put art in a box. We think it's about a certain sort of way of making. All my children have made the same sketchbook with the same sort of ideas in it, but actually, I don't think that's teaching you to be an artist. That's teaching you to do something in a certain way. We all have our own innate creativity, which could sit outside of that completely, but be the only thing we can actually do.
And what's good isn't necessarily good to everyone. No. It's a very subjective thing.
Absolutely.
I love as well. I think the link between art and mental health has sometimes been underestimated, both in what it can do for you while you're creating art, but actually just looking at art as well, opening discussions.
Oh, completely. It's a means for, I think it's a means for a healthier society, and it provides healing, validation, and that if it's that sort of, I think every artist gets a therapeutic benefit from being creative, and I think the trouble is, if you're not actually somebody who's respected or sort of trained or seen as of worth, your art tends to be dismissed as therapy. But actually, art is therapeutic. It is of benefit. It makes people feel better. It also enables other people to sort of, enjoy that and appreciate it. And when you see an art created by people you don't expect or will have seen as artists, it enables you to think you can be creative as well. And I think that's the important lesson.
Where did you start then when it came to breaking down these barriers? Because I think sometimes things look easy when you look back and say, oh, that was obvious.
Yeah.
But it never is obvious. At the very beginning, you've got your own barriers to face.
Yeah. I mean, it's my own story is sort of, I was sort of trained as an artist, and I went to the Slade, and and I was relatively successful, but I really struggled with the art world as an individual who was very sensitive and whose work was deeply personal. I found the commodifying of it deeply challenging. The idea that it's a product and that people were talking about it in a way which had no relation to the intent I put in it, if you know what I mean, sir. So that led me to being really ill, to be honest. I had a sort of period of ill health on the back of it, and I left the art world and stopped painting, And I came back to art through volunteering at a day centre. And it's a really lovely woman called Kathy Pettit, who used to work at the Avondale Centre on Old Shoreham Road in Hove. Just said, "Hey, you like art. You can work with these group of people and run some art sessions with them." And that experience was just mind-blowing, because I sat at this table with the intent of teaching these, and mostly adults with learning disabilities, how to make art. And we all sat down with the cheapest of materials, like sugar paper, felt-tip pens and poster paint, and started to paint the most incredible pictures, despite my best intentions to get them to do something else. Really beautiful stuff, really.
So you were surprised at the level of talent?
Just surprised, but also, I had been made aware of the fact that art can sort of be made by people who haven't been schooled, through an important exhibition back in the 70s called Outsiders, which was a seminal exhibition which celebrated the idea of people making art who weren't conventionally trained, who were making art, in processes and ways outside. So I knew it had value, but I hadn't expected to find it in a day centre in Hove, to find these artists producing the most beautiful work. And the story is, I was so inspired. I went to organise an exhibition at Brighton Library of their works there, and I was really wanted to say, look, this is on your doorstep. And I went back to collect the work to get it framed, and the staff at the day centre said the work wasn't available anymore. And I said, well, so where is it? I've promised the artists, and I've organised this exhibition. And they said, actually, it's all been sort of pulped and made into papier-mâché, And that was like a cycle of, as I see it, creative abuse, where their work wasn't seen as having any value. They weren't seen as artists. It was a containment activity, just to give them something to do. So
that's an incredible story. Well, in just a moment, we'll play a little bit of music, but we'll come back. We'll talk about your book and the big event that you're involved in the next couple of days. Marc Steene, who has been awarded an OBE, and we've been talking about the world of art and your passion for making it not an elitist world, but one that we can all enjoy and benefit from, which isn't always easy. No. Because I suppose for some people, they want it to be an elitist world. Do. Yeah. They want to go, but I'm a special good artist, and other people can't be.
Yeah.
They haven't been to art school like me.
There is a lot of that. I mean, I've spent my working life mostly sort of fighting the establishment at some level. Do you know what I mean? Because there's a whole set of people in power, whether that's a director of a gallery or a museum, whether it's a collector or it's a commercial gallery, who see art in a certain way and art made for certain reasons, who you're having to sort of convince and work with and bring with you. What you don't want to do is slam doors in people's faces, because you won't win them over, but by showing the art, showing that people are making this incredible work but it isn't being seen or included, you can bring them on a journey.
Tell us about your book. This is what you talked about last time. A wonderful book. And just tell us a little bit more about that.
So the book is probably will be the only book I write. It's a distillation of sort of my experiences and work in this area. So it's it's deeply personal. It's some levels, but the intent of the book is to try and enable audiences and people to appreciate the breadth of art, rather than what they might expect it to be. To see that art can be made by someone with a learning disability or a mental health issue, that art can be about healing, it can be about just trying to make sense of the world you're living in. It can be using materials you don't expect. There's some wonderful things which are just on walls in houses, or people have made using things they found in the street. And, there's something liberating about that. And I want audiences to look at the book and to, I think, go away inspired. I've done it in 3 chapters. The first chapter is called Intuition, and it's about people who make art innately, just have that ability to sit in front of something and just create, And
they don't have to have gone to art school for that. It's just a just talent they have, Yeah,
and that's almost like, what people strive for. You see people like Picasso, the famous sort of motto, I went to art school to learn to paint like Raphael, but it took me a lifetime to learn to paint as a child again. And there's something about that capacity to bypass convention that a lot of those innately intuitive artists have, Sarah.
There's a lot of the advice here that can translate into life. Just be who you are.
Absolutely.
Don't spend your life trying to be someone else or trying to be who somebody else thinks that you should be. So that's the first bit of the book, and then you move on.
The second part's called Introspection. So it's more about people who are making art around their own mental health, or the idea of them trying to sort of, gain healing or benefit from that, or about their sort of inner worlds. And it's really interesting. It's about art therapy as well a bit, where art is made in different places and maybe for different reasons, but it still stands as art, and there's some wonderful stories, people in asylums creating amazing art. I mean, one story which has always interests me is a very famous Victorian artist called Richard Dadd, who was in the Bethlehem Hospital for all of his life. He was a Royal Academician previously, but once he had this mental health sort of episode, he was locked up, and he was seen as this sort of, like weird sort of person in, making art in this asylum. But now, when we look back in time, those artists who were sort of conventional and celebrated, have far less interest from Richard Dadd.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And what about the third chapter?
It's called Insight. So it's about people making art around their own lived experiences. So somebody who's had something happen to them, and that's been the sort of, catalyst for their creativity. Trying to make sense of sometimes very difficult life circumstances. Can be around disability. We have some people in the book who've been in prison, and art's been their means to sort of develop, but also to understand that situation for them. It's deeply moving, and there's some really, really powerful stories.
It's a really lovely book, and actually you're hosting a conference not long now, actually, 18th to the 19th. Yes, that is tomorrow, isn't it? Tell us a little bit more about that and how people can find out more.
Yeah, so the symposium's called Humanising the Arts, and as you probably can tell from our conversation, something I believe passionately in, and we've got this wonderful day. We have a panel in the morning of these basically experts and leaders in the field around supporting artists to explore how can you support an artist to find their own voice outside of convention. So what we've been speaking about, Sarah, so how can you enable somebody to work in a way best suited to themselves, rather than being given the canvas and some oil paints and say that's how you are an artist. Yeah. So
and people can find out more in your lovely book as well. That's Outside In, isn't
Outside
it?
In, yeah.
And is that available
everywhere?
All good bookshops online?
Good
you put that in and you can find it.
Yeah.
It's more than art, really. It's kind of it's a real insight into
stories,
life.
Yeah, it's stories, lots of artist stories, and it's on our website if you want to support the charity. So if you buy it through our website, we get more of the money for it.
Right.
So,
tell us about the website then and how people go on, and I'm sure they can find out about this event there as well.
They can. So our website is our sort of primary sort of thing. We have 4,000 artists with online galleries on our website. Like hundreds of artists from Sussex, all across the world actually, but the website's address is www.outsidein.org.uk, and you can see all those amazing artists, all their galleries there. There's all the information about our symposium, our events. We have artist talks, we have share art events, we have sort of artists talking about their work, workshops, all of that.
Oh, wonderful. It's so lovely to see you again. Thank you for coming into the studio.
No, it's a pleasure,
really good to see you.
Yeah.
Marc Steene, my lunch break guest today.